I've been on YouTube for a year now, and to celebrate, I'm remaking my first ever video. It was a topic close to my heart, the Dreamcast ASCII pad. I want to see how my skills have improved, and I want to do these wonderful contraptions justice by doing a proper documentary about them. Let's see how we get on. Welcome to Retro Faith. Hello, welcome to the show. Got a real special treat for you guys tonight, especially you Dreamcast fans. A year ago I made a video on these little bad boys, the Dreamcast ASCII fighting controller. Now, it was a really rubbish video. I went back and looked at it a day or so ago and I just thought, this is one of my favourite accessories. I really need to do it justice. There's not too much content out there on the ASCII pad. So I thought I'm going to do a much better job than what's been out there before, especially my own video. I think it's important to explain a little bit about the journey I've had with these controllers. I discovered these after thinking I want to play fighting games on the Dreamcast. Yes, the arcade stick's really good, but sometimes you just want to sit there with a controller quickly, have a quick blast and not be setting up sticks and everything. So you're going to go to the normal Dreamcast controller, which is rubbish for fighting games. The D-pad is terrible. The button layout is not suited for fighting games at all. And it just was a bit of a mess. Luckily, a great game came out in 2000 called Capcom VS SNK. Now, this is one of my favourite games of all time. It's absolutely sensational. We're going to show some gameplay footage as we're discussing it. But it basically brought together the world of Capcom beat-em-ups, fighters, and the world of SNK with all their fighting games and bits and pieces. It was amazing, and you had to unlock all the characters, and Geese was the final boss, and you could fight Akuma, and all these different things were happening in it. It's an amazing game. It's really what kind of drew me towards the Dreamcast, these high-quality fighting games that were just as good as they were in the arcade. Yeah, PlayStation wasn't capable of doing it. Even the PS2 struggles with some of these games. But the Dreamcast with 2D fighting games, there is nothing better from around the turn of the century. So it was important that they had some proper controllers so you could enjoy them. The actual Dreamcast Sega arcade stick, the official one, is a really good arcade stick. Even to this day, it holds up well. It's nice and clicky and it's marvellous. But as we were saying earlier on, not everybody wants to use an arcade stick, and it was important that some company jumped out there and said, we're going to make a controller to use with these fighting games. And that's where ASCII stepped in. ASCII are a company, they're probably more well known in Japan. They release a lot of controllers. I would say that most people watching this video will know who the company is. Probably had a controller for a Mega Drive or a SNES or even for a home computer. So they're quite a big company. They do lots of different things. They make microphones, they do controllers, they do accessories, but it's really high quality. It's not like, Blaze or something like that doing some cheap £10 controller for your Xbox. This is quality gear and you sometimes had to pay. Now the controllers were released in 4 different versions. The original one was just a standard plain grey ASCII controller. It looks a little bit like the colour of the Dreamcast itself, so it matched up. And it just come out with this lovely aesthetic of bison fighting on the front. And that's actually the front cover of Street Fighter 03 on the Dreamcast, the online version called Match-Up Service version. So that's where that came from, and it's absolutely fantastic to play with. You can look at me here in the footage. I'm having an absolute whale of a time. I absolutely love the ASCII controller. And when these original ones came out, it was amazing. And I jumped at it and I got one imported from Japan. That was the problem. The reason why people always slate the Dreamcast controller is because, for whatever reason, all the decent Dreamcast controllers are actually in Japan. In the UK or Europe especially, we only ever got the standard controller and a couple of third-party ones which were just as bad. And it was a real shame because there was some amazing controllers. There still are some amazing controllers out there to get in Japan. And being a fighting game fan, I had to pick one of these up, so I did. Now, that was released just before the game came out, and then to celebrate the release of Capcom vs SNK, Capcom obviously were having chats with ASCII and said, your controller's amazing, why don't we release some limited edition ones and get the ball rolling and see where we end up. So they brought out these ones. These are really special ones. You've got a Capcom one, which is like the Capcom colours, like black and yellow, and you've got an SNK one, which is mostly blue to match their colour scheme of their logo. And they look wonderful together. They're real pieces of art, I think. I think their aesthetics is beautiful. And it does look a little bit like the Sega Saturn controller, but we'll get onto that in a little bit when we talk about how these controllers actually play. Now, what was great about these releases when they did these sort of limited edition Capcom and SNK ones was these little collector cards that came with it, and it had all the moves of the characters, so it was like a kind of an accessory to your manual with the game, where you could have your favourite character card just near you, so you could just quickly look up the moves, and it had some really nice art on the front of the card, which was exactly the same art that was used in the game. So it all matched up lovely, and they're really beautiful. I do like looking through these cards once in a while, just so I can have a little bit of a look back and think, wow, what a game this was when it came out. It still holds up today. It's one of the best fighting games on the Dreamcast, and yeah, there's a lot of good ones. But it wasn't just these two special controllers that came out. There was actually a prize draw that was run by ASCII and Dreamcast Club in Japan, or Dreamcast Director, whatever what you want to call it. You had to send off your receipts for buying both of the Capcom and the SNK controller, and send the receipts off, and you get entered into a prize draw to win one of the special limited edition skeleton pads. Now, anyone that's familiar with Japanese hardware, especially the Sega Saturn, will know of the Sega Saturn This Is Cool system. It's a really cool looking Sega Saturn with this kind of see-through dark plastic, and the controller matches it, and it looks exactly like that, this ASCII one. It looks just like that, and it's really, really fun that you can have all these different coloured ASCII pads. And now there's only 1,000 of these ones made, so I'm one of the lucky people in the world that has one of these in a box. They're quite rare to come across in a box, and they can be quite expensive. But what about the actual controllers themselves? We've had Capcom, who have celebrated the release of their great game, their collaboration with SNK with these limited controllers and an extra extended limited one, and you've got all these great controls to play with. But what's it like to actually play with? Well, I'm going to tell you now. If you like fighting games and you would prefer to use a controller over an arcade stick, then this is the best controller I've ever used. And I've been playing fighting games for 30 years, so if I'm saying that, there must be some truth in it. The actual D-pad is really loose, so when you're doing the moves, like especially like quarter circles, half circles, and a lot of SNK characters, they'll use a lot of half circle and quarter circles at the same time. Things like having to do a 360 is really good. You're holding back and forward moves, like your charge moves, they're performed really well, and the buttons are nice and clicky, and they're just spaced enough, so they're big enough that you don't miss them, but they're not crunched up enough that you end up hitting the wrong one. It's also got a built-in rumble pack, so you don't have to have that extra accessory, which you can just turn on and off. For fighting games, it's best off though. And also, there's people out there that love their shooters on the Dreamcast, and this is the perfect controller for that, because the actual D-pad works exactly the same as the arcade stick does. So if you really enjoy shooting games and you're looking for a controller, this is it. This is the exact one that you're going to be looking for, rather than trying to use that D-pad on the original Dreamcast controller. It's just not good enough. The fact you've also got all 6 face buttons on the controller means for Capcom games where you've got your light, medium and hard punch and kicks, they're all in front of you, just like they would be in the arcade, and you can have an absolute blast. I've never played a fighting game, whether it be a Capcom one, an SNK one, the Guilty Gear games, whatever it might be, or a shooter, and thought this isn't working and this isn't very good. Now, it wasn't just these fight type controllers that came out in this range. ASCII also developed a brand new fight stick as well, and it falls under the same range as well. And as you can see from the pictures, it all matches up as well. So you've also got the arcade sticks, which I would say aren't quite as good as the actual Sega arcade stick, the official Sega Dreamcast arcade stick, but they're very good, and they're close. And also, they also come with the collector cards, and it's all part of the collection. So I had to get these as well. And it was actually these what finished off my collection, getting the last one of these, a couple of years ago, I think it was. But there you have it. That's the ASCII Fight Type controller and where it came from. And hopefully a much better video this time. I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have, revisiting the ASCII controllers and actually getting some proper information out there for you. I've been Retro Faith. Thanks for watching. Keep it retro.